If you were stuck on an island with 1,000 people, would you choose socialism or communism to survive? What if your freedom was on the line? Your business? Your voice? This isn't just theory. These systems have shaped billions of lives, but which one actually works? Today, with the help of advanced AI, we brought these two ideologies face to face. Both sides were given full access to relevant information, and 4 AI judges will score each argument from 1 to 10 based on a set of clear criteria, and in the end, we reach the answer to our questions.
Let me start by clarifying what we actually mean by communism, because most people think it's just when the government does stuff. Real communism is a stateless, classless society where workers collectively own everything. No private property, no money, no state, just pure collective ownership and production based on need, not profit.
And socialism is the democratic path to worker ownership. We use existing institutions like elections and unions to gradually transfer power from capitalists to workers. We keep markets for consumer goods but put major industries under public control. Think Scandinavian countries, but with more worker cooperatives and public ownership.
You call it gradual, I call it compromised. You're trying to reform a system designed to exploit workers. It's like asking a vampire to go vegetarian. The fundamental nature doesn't change.
At least our approach doesn't require burning down civilization first. You want to abolish money and the state overnight? Good luck coordinating anything more complex than a farmer's market.
Fair point about complexity. But you're missing something crucial. Capitalism will never voluntarily give up power. Your democratic socialism assumes the ruling class will just hand over their wealth, because you asked nicely.
And you assume people will spontaneously organize into perfect communes without any transition period. We've seen how communist revolutions actually work out. They create new ruling classes, just with different titles.
Socialism would collapse faster because it maintains the fundamental contradiction between workers and owners. Even on a small island, you'd still have some people controlling capital while others sell their labor. This creates inherent instability. The capitalist class will always try to maximize profits at workers' expense. In a communist island, everyone contributes according to ability and receives according to need. No one hoards resources because there's no mechanism for accumulation. The collapse scenarios you see in communist attempts weren't pure communism anyway. They were state socialist transitions that got stuck in authoritarianism. A true communist island eliminates the profit motive entirely, so there's no incentive for exploitation or resource hoarding. Everyone has equal stake in collective success. Socialism tries to regulate capitalism rather than eliminate it, which is like trying to tame a wildfire instead of putting it out.
Your communist island would collapse within weeks because you've eliminated every practical mechanism for coordination and resource allocation. Without prices, markets, or democratic institutions, how do you decide who grows food versus who builds shelter? You say, from each according to ability, but who determines abilities? In our socialist island, we have democratic institutions making collective decisions about major resources while maintaining individual incentives for productivity. Workers own the means of production through cooperatives and public ownership, but we keep market mechanisms for coordination. We've seen this work in places like Kerala, India, or the Mondragon cooperatives in Spain. Your system sounds beautiful in theory, but requires either perfect human nature or some external force to coordinate complex decisions. Our approach combines the best of collective ownership with proven coordination mechanisms. We get equality without chaos. Every single communist revolution has led to dictatorship: Soviet Union, China, Cuba, Cambodia, North Korea. The pattern is consistent because abolishing all existing institutions creates a power vacuum that strongmen fill. You can't eliminate the state and markets simultaneously without some transitional authority, and that authority never voluntarily dissolves itself. Socialist countries like Sweden, Norway, and Germany maintain strong democracies while achieving significant worker ownership and social equality. We work within democratic frameworks, strengthening them through increased participation and worker control. Our path builds democratic institutions rather than destroying them. When you eliminate all existing coordination mechanisms overnight, someone has to coordinate resource allocation and social organization, and historically, that someone becomes a dictator. Democratic socialism prevents this by maintaining checks and balances while gradually transferring economic power to workers. We strengthen democracy by making it more inclusive, not by abandoning it entirely.
You're confusing state socialism with communism. Those dictatorships you mentioned never achieved actual communism because they maintained state control. True communism is stateless by definition, so it cannot become a dictatorship. Your socialist democracies aren't immune to authoritarianism either. Look how quickly democratic countries slide toward fascism when capitalism faces crisis. The Weimar Republic was democratic until economic collapse enabled Hitler's rise. Socialist democracy still concentrates power in state institutions that can be captured by reactionary forces. In genuine communism, there's no central authority to corrupt because decision-making is truly decentralized among communes and worker councils. The dictatorships you cite were attempts at transition that got stuck because they tried to use state power to achieve communism, but you can't use hierarchical means to achieve non-hierarchical ends. Your system maintains the capitalist state structure, just with better welfare programs. When crisis hits, that same state apparatus can easily turn authoritarian to protect property rights. Socialism preserves wage slavery by maintaining the employer-employee relationship. Even in worker cooperatives, some people still work for others rather than working for collective benefit. Your system might improve working conditions, but it doesn't eliminate the fundamental relationship where people must sell their labor to survive. In communist society, nobody works for anyone else. Everyone contributes to collective prosperity and shares in collective abundance. The slavery you see in communist transitions occurred during periods of state socialism, not actual communism. Those were authoritarian attempts to reach communism that failed precisely because they maintained hierarchical control structures. True communism eliminates the conditions that create slavery: private property, wage labor, and class distinctions. When everyone owns everything collectively, nobody can be exploited because there's no separate class of owners to extract value from workers. Your socialist democracies still have CEOs making hundreds of times more than their workers, which is just a gentler form of exploitation.
Your communist experiments created literal slave labor, gulags, forced collectivization, and labor camps. When you eliminate market mechanisms for coordinating work, you need coercion to get people to do necessary but unpleasant jobs. Who wants to clean sewers in your stateless commune? In socialist systems, we maintain individual choice about employment while ensuring fair compensation and worker protections. People can change jobs, negotiate conditions, and participate democratically in workplace decisions. Cuba still uses forced labor for sugar harvests. The Soviet Union had internal passports preventing people from moving freely. China uses prison labor for manufacturing. Every communist system has relied on forcing people to work without adequate compensation because voluntary cooperation only works for pleasant tasks. Our approach preserves individual liberty while ensuring collective benefit. Workers can choose their careers, move between jobs, and maintain personal autonomy while benefiting from collective ownership of major industries. Freedom requires choice, and choice requires alternatives, something your system eliminates. Communist systems don't bankrupt businesses, they eliminate them entirely, destroying all the innovation and efficiency that competition creates. Look at East versus West Germany, North versus South Korea. The communist side stagnated economically while the mixed economies thrived. Socialist systems keep beneficial aspects of business competition while preventing exploitation. We maintain markets for consumer goods and services, allowing businesses to succeed or fail based on meeting people's needs. But we put essential services like healthcare, education, and utilities under public control where profit motives cause harm. This approach encourages innovation while preventing exploitation. Countries like Denmark have thriving businesses alongside strong social programs. Our mixed economy approach gets the benefits of both systems: market efficiency where it works, public control where markets fail. Your system provides no mechanism for businesses to emerge, adapt, or improve based on changing needs. Without competition or price signals, you get the economic stagnation we saw throughout the communist world.
You're defending the system that created the 2008 financial crisis, regular boom-bust cycles, and planned obsolescence. Capitalism doesn't bankrupt individual businesses, it bankrupts entire economies through speculation and overproduction crisis. Socialist businesses still operate under capitalist logic. They must compete and pursue growth or die. This maintains the same destructive incentives that drive environmental destruction and worker exploitation. Communist production focuses on meeting actual human needs rather than generating profit, eliminating the waste and instability inherent in market systems. We don't need businesses in the traditional sense because production is organized democratically by communities based on what they actually need. No more producing garbage to create artificial demand. No more financial speculation. No more economic crashes caused by profit-seeking behavior. You're thriving. Socialist businesses still extract surplus value from workers and contribute to commodity fetishism. The stagnation you mention in communist countries came from state control, not worker control. There's a huge difference between bureaucratic planning and democratic coordination. Socialism cannot prevent corruption because it maintains the fundamental structures that enable it: concentrated wealth, hierarchical institutions, and state power. Even democratic socialist governments can be bought by wealthy interests, as we see throughout Europe, where corporations still influence policy through lobbying and campaign contributions. Communist society eliminates the material basis for corruption by abolishing private property accumulation and hierarchical power structures. Without money or class distinctions, there's nothing to be corrupt about, and no mechanism for corruption to operate. You can't bribe someone in a gift economy, and you can't accumulate power in a stateless system. The corruption seen in communist transitions happened during state socialist phases where bureaucrats controlled resources, but that's not communism, that's just a different form of state capitalism. True communism makes corruption structurally impossible because there are no concentrated resources to control, and no separate class of decision-makers to influence. Democratic participation in all economic decisions means transparency by necessity.
Every communist system has been incredibly corrupt, party officials living in luxury while ordinary people struggled, black markets flourishing, and nepotism determining access to resources. Without market mechanisms and democratic accountability, there's no way to prevent those with political connections from hoarding resources. Socialist systems prevent corruption through democratic oversight, press freedom, and competitive elections. When politicians must face voters regularly and media can investigate freely, corruption gets exposed and punished. Countries like Norway and New Zealand consistently rank among the world's least corrupt precisely because they combine strong democratic institutions with social ownership. Your system has no accountability mechanisms. If local communes make bad decisions or favor certain people, there's no higher authority to appeal to and no way to vote them out. Market competition also provides a check on corruption because consumers can choose alternatives when businesses become corrupt or inefficient. Democratic socialism combines transparency, accountability, and choice, the three essential ingredients for preventing corruption.
The debate has come to an end. The judges made their decision, and from their perspective, socialism came out on top. I hope you learned something along the way. If you enjoyed this content, your support means the world to me and keeps this project going.